Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Deadpool and Wolverine. I know I'd already gone on and reviewed this movie, but one, I wanted to see it more than once, and two, I wanted to try as much as possible to be a little bit more accurate, a little bit more research involved, and I wanted to go on and also just attempt this again. I wanted to do it right this time around. So, with Deadpool and Wolverine, I feel that this movie is to be a lot more Old Man Logan than Logan actually was. We would go on to have this movie not only respect the Island of Misfit Toys Marvel characters of the past, but then also respect Marvel and Deadpool comic books, giving us a huge amount of Easter eggs and a huge amount of stuff that we can just awe and gush about to make us happy, want to study the Blade, feel that this movie doesn't hold a torch to prior Deadpool movies, and makes us want to eat things like nachos and gamble away our life savings on the merchandise that is otherwise provided in this film, because it's like, oh my god, this is freaking amazing. And gives us a pretty hefty reminder on the Logan film, for sure. And sometimes, yeah, like both Deadpool and Wolverine are at odds at one another, but then they are also at some points to be very in sync. So I'm trying as much as humanly possible to cover all of the eggs in one basket here. But so we have me want to go on and say that this movie is as equally as important or as equally as impactful as Avengers Endgame. And it's telling us that, like, well, like, we didn't really give a crap about any of the other MCU projects because this one is going to be a lot more interesting than whatever else we could have gone on and tried to accomplish here. And so, with that said, this movie is freaking epic. A lot of people are probably going to go on and sleep on this movie, and they shouldn't. This movie is going on and making projected to be $1 billion, and it actually should. And consistently, when Deadpool is to be even more Ryan Reynolds in this movie than he probably ever has been, like going on and having Deadpool at one point just kind of mocking Fox for how they had dropped the ball with him, to then have him be just so happy that he's now involved in Disney and Disney World and this and that. Throughout this film is just a lot of just hilarity and fun. But yeah, so like we would go on to have so many different variants in this film. Variants of eventually Wolverine and also Deadpool. There is to be some team action going on, like kind of villains against heroes. And then also there is to be this mass number of something that is to be at my core, like to just be so like, oh my god, they freaking did this. I am so amazed. I am just so in awe by the way, especially they pushed this third act. And to give me like every single Easter eggish like thing to make this almost as equal to combining both Avengers Endgame with also a Spider-Verse like movie as well. Not to say that there is an Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland Spider-Man character. None of the movie characters, none of the animated movie characters of Spider-Man are going to be in this movie. I want to straight up confirm that so people don't go on and hate me because I state something about a Spider-Man or a Spider-Verse. No, None of that is in this film. Please do not chew me to death, because I go on and state that. So, but there is so much reference, if not anything else, of so many other Marvel characters in this movie, and I'm just like, oh my god, they went there. They're going here. They're doing this, and it's freaking fun. Oh my god. So, with that, again, like, I wanted to go on and legitimately do my homework, because if I were to have been familiar with a number of these certain characters, I was to have not specifically known their names. And then also, like, I'm not exactly 100% knowing of all the little side characters of the Deadpool films, and not all well and knowing of the Loki crap, because really I couldn't have been bothered to legitimately watch all of that. But they even have to go on and state that one character is to have been from a certain specific episode of Loki. So logically, if you haven't seen Loki whatsoever, you may want to go on and do so, if before watching this film, or more than likely retroactively after. Trying to go on and help MCU still, for the most point, just for the lack of good quality things, still suck. But you gotta figure out how to just want to watch any of this crap anyways. So, with that said, let's go on and let's just go into spoilers fully about this film. So I feel that I will go on and be able to, in my best way possible, get my foot forward and hopefully do this right this time around. So, with that said, let me know in the comments below how you felt about Wolverine and Deadpool, or Deadpool and Wolverine. I think at some points, like, it seemed that there was a jostling around of this title, but it's maybe always had been Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, I thought it was like Deadpool versus Wolverine and this and that. But regardless, there was a number of articles that had all gone on and at one point or another had said something connected to this film, and it was rather interesting to see, like, oh my god, this was all connected from all of these articles to eventually make sense out of this whole entire movie. Like, luckily I took the time to read a number of those articles, but more than likely I may not go on and connect them all when I'm to go on and talk about this review, because there's so much to freaking talk about. So, with that said, yeah, like, if you haven't gone on and seen this movie, I feel that you absolutely will be rewarded for going on and doing so. And this is a movie that it is to really just be a walk, not run, to go on and check it out, because really, like, the more and more that you don't go on and see it, the more that you're probably going to get spoiled by somebody from it. And luckily, I had gone on and seen this movie the night before and then rewatched it again today. But again, like, I know probably I would have gone and done well with views for the prior review, regardless of how I am to go on and break this all down. But it's not all about that. Like, it's just trying to go on and do the best review I can possibly can, especially a review that I'm much more awake on. And have the time to now just be like, okay, what all happened in this film? And let's go on and do my due diligence and legwork. So, with that said, let's go on and get into spoilers. I'm going to go on and, of course, after my usual dance and song, I'm going to go on and pause this review and get out my phone, so that way I can go on and be able to talk about this movie and go into more details of which that I want to go on and talk about. But I feel like a lot of this movie is just, ooh, ah, oh my god, oh, like, and so I don't want to go through this entire review just stating those emotions and those just like, ah, kind of things, because I feel like this movie is going to definitely go on and make you want to do so, while just being shocked and surprised that they finally went there, that they finally got these characters to be in a Deadpool and Wolverine film. So, let's freaking rejoice, because this is a one of a kind like film that legitimately just does the kitchen sink of everything that it tries to do. And I have to state that, like, this movie story wise is not perfect, but legitimately there's so much stuff that they throw in this film that like is to be the best fan service movie, uh besides maybe the Multiverse of Madness, or uh possibly just Avengers Endgame, in a way, to just justify that whole huge buildup of all of those characters and where do they finish up and wrap up their stories. So with that said, let's go on, and let me pause this because it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. Okay, so now that we're in spoilers, man, like this movie, like for how like it's only like almost 2 hours, like man, does it just take a lot out of you. It's a lot of energy for this movie because of just the pure Easter egg like things that it just like oh my god, oh my god. And really this movie was a dream. Like it was not real. Like I was to wake up after a long slumber and just be like seriously, like this movie happened, right? Like they finally did this, right? And also letting everybody know my that I'm a fan, that I'm actually wearing a Gambit shirt, legitimately, and also a number of just fan stuff that I always freaking just have laying around. Uh, Luckily, just in case, but they've been laying around for a very long time. Anyways, luckily, I have like a decent amount of catalog of just Marvel shirts that I just have lying around, for any certain films or whatever. But hey, eventually it's going to run out. I'm going to have to get very creative somewhere down the line, when it comes down to the more current films and whichever. But let's get into this. So we of course go on and have the intro, the dun 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 dun, and even so much so that Deadpool even has to chime in on the Marvel intro and just be so happy the fact that he has been brought back, because supposedly he was wondering if he was ever going to get another film, even though how successful he was, like because there was a whole lot of like Fox and Disney right issues, and so he was just kind of like, I don't know if legitimately this is ever going to happen again. But also like bringing just Deadpool back with another character, I guess, goes on and kind of slightly tweaks everything, and kind of tweaking and adjusting certain costumes and stuff like that. Also, like would have, I guess, this character uh, have the ability to just be brought back in some way, but also like Disney buying out Fox, like I'm sure there wouldn't have been a huge problem there. But anyways, so we would of course have Deadpool that is talking to the fans and saying like, okay guys, like I get it that a lot of you are very concerned about how we're going to treat the whole Logan dying thing, and if we're going to do it gracefully or if we're going to go on and like we're not going to like give it any well send off treatments or whatever. And Deadpool immediately tells the fans like, well, we're not going to do that at all. We're going to go on and let me pause here for a second. I'm sorry about that. I had to adjust the brightness a little bit. If you can see, it's a little bit more brighter. Yeah, I realized that I didn't readjust the brightness for when I was watching this prior because of my migraines. So we go on to have Deadpool, who starts digging out Wolverine, stating that, of course, like a lot of fans would probably state that it's like, well, Wolverine has a healing factor. How is he really going to be dead here? It doesn't make sense. And we would go on to have Deadpool, who is to dig Wolverine up and like Yahtzee, bingo, like yeah, we found his body. And so Deadpool goes on and is sitting alongside Wolverine, and saying like, you know what, I'm not a scientist, but you look clearly passed away. And so we see the whole skeleton of just Wolverine, and uh, so all of a sudden, like, we would have Deadpool that is starting to much more talk like Ryan Reynolds and state the fact that because of all the money that had been thrown to Hugh Jackman, all the more reason for him to come back as Wolverine. And Deadpool would go on and say the same. So the more and more that they are kind of really breaking the fourth wall here, all of a sudden the Minutemen from the Loki show that are tied to the TVA all start to appear here, an army of Minutemen, all wanting to get to Deadpool, of course, because of them stating how he had gone on and adjusted his timeline and going on and distorting it to where he has to go on and be held for his crimes. And also, they eventually want Deadpool for the sacred timeline, and that is to not be in his own. So, like, there's a kind of struggle between Deadpool getting to the sacred timeline, but then also being in his own. So, the Minutemen going on and wanting Deadpool to surrender his weapons. Deadpool is like, well, hey, I won't use my weapons to go on and fight you guys, but I'm not surrendering my weapons. So Deadpool goes on to fight these Minutemen with the skeletal remains of Wolverine, which is freaking hilarious. And all while we're doing this, we have the song kick in of NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. And also Deadpool or Dancepool is going on and doing the whole dance moves of like NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye, and it's freaking hilarious. As well as we also come to find that certain members of NSYNC had made it to one of the Deadpool and Wolverine premieres, and so I was like, okay, why are they there? And then come to find out, I understood why. We would also realize that one, NSYNC had at some point been involved in one of the Star Wars movies, but that part just ended up getting cut, as well as also NSYNC. NSYNC's Bye 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 was used actually in Cyclops' car in X-Men 2 X-Men United, and as a goofy little joke there. So like very much full circle to like X-Men movies or Deadpool movies going on reusing music from an X-Men film. So as Deadpool is to go on and use the skeleton as Wolverine for a lot of jokes, we have here where Deadpool jabs a bone into one Minuteman's crotch area to just kind of quickly stroke it and have this little joke here. And then also Deadpool grabs the actual camera as a weird selfie to just be next to this Minuteman. And so all of these bones bejokingly are to be used here, and it's freaking hilarious. And we again have Deadpool, who is weirdly doing these like Michael Jackson crotch grabbing and NSYNC dancing, and it's great. So Deadpool goes on and is to attach himself the bone adamantium claws on his arms, and is to whip out these claws upon his hands. And we then have to transition here of how he got to this point. So we now go to March 14th, 2008 on Earth 616, the Sacred Timeline. So we would have Deadpool or Wade Wilson that is going on and registering to be a part of the Avengers. And we would go on to have all of this Iron Man gear from all of the movies being orchestratingly placed to remember all of the Iron Man stuff. But then we're possibly thinking like, oh my god, is he talking to Robert Downey Jr. here? Tony Stark? Oh my god. But then we find that it's Happy Hogan, and we're just as pleased because there's a lot of just good comedy here. So Wade Wilson goes on and talks to Happy Hogan, and so we would go on to have Happy asking Wade about, like, well, hey, like it seems that you have a resume of being a part of a prior team. Tell me about that. It's like, oh yeah, like Wade just mentions, like, well, yeah, um, I had been involved in X Force, but most of them had gotten killed off because a lot of the focus groups didn't like a lot of the characters, specifically Cable. But we would go on and notice that, like, Deadpool then went on and tried to save all of those characters so they can be reused at some point in these films. Questioning characters like Shatterstar, because I'm like, shouldn't he be teamed up with his other character that he's known for, like, being with? Um, and also, like, at some point us doing something with Mojo World, but maybe we just never will. Sadly enough, or we'll never do the arcade murder world. Sadly enough, in these X-Men films, but man, would that have been great. But so we go on to have Happy, who eventually asks Wade, it's like, well, hey, like, why do you want to be a part of the Avengers? And Wade is a state that he needs to go on and be a part of the Avengers for Vanessa, and like he wants to, like, show that he's of value, that he is important, and so on in so many words. So Happy is to go on and state, it's like, you know what, like, you say that you need to be an Avenger, but like, if anything, actually, like, the only reason why you should be an Avenger is because people need you, not vice versa. And so eventually Happy goes on to just tell Deadpool as he starts to get up and starts to walk around, because Deadpool goes on and is to consistently to be ping at Happy for him only being a chauffeur, and that, like, he's kind of wasting all of this good speech on Happy instead of going on and talking to Tony Stark, who doesn't go on and does cameos or meetings. And that when Hogan is to state that he's technically Avenger, Wade goes on and is like, wait a minute, like, you're an Avenger? And he's like, Avengers adjacent. And he's like, what is your superpower? Parallel parking? So Happy goes on and again, he stands up and he tells Wade here, he's like, you know what, like I found, like, where I'm most happy, and like, if anything, you should go on and find the same. Like, if anything, like, you trying to get into the Avengers is reaching far too high. Like, maybe you need to find somewhere in the middle and like, hit that perfectly, kind of like a like an like you practicing archery. He doesn't say that, but that's where I'm going with here. So the more that Hogan is trying to get Wade out of this office and just be like, hey, we'll look into you, we'll go on and we'll kind of like keep your resume on file. We would have Wade that goes on and hugs Happy here and stating, like, hey man, like, thanks for the ride. Like, if anything, I'll go to Shake Shack after this, and and just have a fun time. So because of the hard blow of Deadpool not getting into the Avengers, that really just went on and, like, really hurt his psyche, to the point of him going back to Earth a 10005 to then have 6 years pass, and he is a part of a car company called Drive Max, where he goes on and he's trying to sell this car to this family, and they end up saying, it's like, well, hey, like, why is this car much better than any other? And Deadpool is to say, it's like, well, like, because it's not as a piece of shit as this other car. And the mother turns to Deadpool, is like, you know what, you don't have to cuss every other word. And Deadpool turns to the kids and like, hey, I'm sorry, I haven't had sex in a while. So after, of course, this failed sale, we come to find that Deadpool is wearing a wig on his head and is to really have gone on and tried to adjust to the modern world. So Deadpool, or Wade, is going on and talking to Peter here. And so Peter is telling Wade, hey man, like, so you didn't make the sale? And Wade is like, no. And so Peter is like, well, hey man, like, how about you just kind of boost your spirits? How about you go on and you open up this locker and like put on this Deadpool costume? And Wade is like, no, like, I'm not that guy anymore. And like, Wade is just kind of happy where he's at. So, like, just kind of disparaging what all he ends up actually saying there. Let's move on. So Peter and Wade bike their way back to this part of town to eventually make their way back to Wade's humble abode, so they can go to this surprise birthday party that probably isn't a real surprise to anybody going on and watching the trailers. So all of a sudden, both Wade and both Peter are kind of just standing here, and Peter is going on and saying to Wade, it's like, you know what, I get it. Like I know that you don't want to go on and be Deadpool anymore, because Peter is to say to Wade, is like, yeah, we're Deadpool, and Wade's like, I'm not even Deadpool anymore. Like, what are you talking about? So Peter ends up going on and stating that, like, well, hey, maybe this is like a midlife crisis, and maybe you should go on and do like my friend did and have like all these piercings being done on your body, which is just a comedic thing because he ends up showing his like full on body piercings and having a good joke of it at this birthday party. So we all of a sudden see these pictures being done, and Wade is like, what the heck is that? We come to realize that that is to be the TVA going on and investigating into Wade, because they'll need him for the sacred timeline. So Wade and Peter make their way to this party where there, of course, is to be Shatterstars and Dohinder and Buck, that was to have been the bar guy, because we don't have Weasel in here, because the actor who had gone on and played Weasel, C.J. Miller, stated that he wants nothing to do with Ryan Reynolds ever again, sadly enough. But hey, like, maybe at some point, like, there is going to be possibly like a mending of a relationship there, sadly enough. I would like that to happen, just to eventually just get CJ Miller back into one of these kinds of movies. But like, who knows, maybe like a bridge has just really been burnt there, sadly enough. So Wade starts to make the rounds and is going on and talking to Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Yukiko. And of course, Wade goes on like, oh, hi, Yukiko. Like he had gone on and did in the second film, where he goes on like, hi, Yukiko. If it doesn't even make sense, he's just like, hi, Yukiko. And I was thinking that was going to happen. But the only thing Deadpool goes on and does, and is to be like, later on, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Yukiko, that you even had to hear that. When Buck goes on and he is to improvise, and it is kind of funny how like Deadpool, like, or Wade turns to Buck, is like, hey, you improvising? Because he's trying as much as possible to not have this guy have a lick of any lines in this film. So we start to go through the party, and Wade is talking to Colossus about how he had watched some show or this and that, and then he goes on to make it to Blind Al, where they talk about like how Al is now like trying to sell dream catchers, and how Wade isn't very successful at selling cars, and Blind Al is to have hoped that at some point the fire had finished Wade off because God couldn't have been bothered to. So at some point, the two of them start to talk about drugs, and Deadpool states like, "We can't talk about drugs, any of the slang, any of the lingo, any like this all comes off the trailer, so we knew that this joke was happening, but it's still funny. Like they go into all of these slang and goofy like things, and so yeah, like we also have to mention that Dohinder had this goofy joke about AirPods, and like Shatterstar was to also just also be there for the joke, but like I guess you couldn't have figured out how to have rolled in everybody in this party. So lastly, Wade makes his way to Vanessa. And so Vanessa is to go on and state that she is dating somebody else right now. So we're like, oh, like, but then again, the actual Vanessa actor, I believe, is dating the guy, or dating, is to be with the guy who is the lead in the show OC, which of course I like, and also he was in Gotham. Weirdly enough, we're gonna have some DC and Marvel connections in this film, and it's freaking great. But let's move on here. So we would have Wade that is to go on, and it's to finally get to the blowing of the candle of his cake. So Wade goes on to, of course, have this picture of all of his friends, and he states that this is to be like the most important thing. His prized possession is to just have this photo of all of them, and it's a real sweet and tender moment. And so he blows out this one candle, and so like certain people are to kind of call like out that Wade is having this kind of midlife crisis, and is saying that he's having menopause and this and that, and that ends up being Buck, and Wade is just like, yeah, you're improvising here. So there ends up being a knock at the door, and so Wade ends up being the one to answer it, and so he immediately has this joke that all these Minutemen are all these strippers, and he's like, okay, like I know that you're wearing a mask, but like I wanna like definitely see into your eyes, and while we're doing it, and this and that, he has all this sexual humor, and he's talking about pegging, and he's like, well, yeah, like if anything, I might be very familiar with pegging, but Disney sure isn't. So the Minutemen all go on and take Deadpool all on right now, and they grab him and they force him through one of their portals. So I don't know all the real true Loki lingo of what all these things are. So legitimately, I'm probably going to go on and not exactly go through all the Loki crap, because I didn't really watch that show enough to remember or retain most of it. Um, but then again, also like at some point, people go on and they get um, purged, um, or whatever it's called, when they take the stick and they void them out, or they transfer them to the void. So I know it starts with a P, but heaven forbid I actually know what it actually is to have been said. So Deadpool is to go on and wake up in this office, or this kind of futuristic area, and so he is met by Paradox, going on and telling him that he is to be part of the TVA, and refreshing people if they don't remember who the Loki people are, because maybe they didn't even see any of that show. Logically, they probably will after this movie is done, because heaven forbid people take that time. So we would, of course, go on and have had Wade's wig now ripped off, and the Paradox is going on to be like, hey, what's wrong with your head? It's like, well, yeah, I was wearing a wig. So Deadpool had supposedly soiled himself, and Deadpool is to go on and say like, yeah, I wasn't really knocked out. So Paradox here is to really just introduce himself, and this is all because Deadpool shouldn't know who any of these people are. So Paradox goes on and takes Deadpool to this room of all of these TV screens to go on and tell him that he is to be a possible savior of the sacred timeline, and that he is to, in Deadpool's words, be the Messiah, or Marvel Jesus. And we have at some point where Deadpool is to run to the camera and grab it, be like, "Yeah, suck it, Marvel!" And he smashes the camera, and he's like, "I'm in Disney World now." So Deadpool goes on and is talking to Paradox here, and they kind of tease to the fact that now that Deadpool is to be rolled into the MCU, they're saying like, "Oh, like, is there going to be a bunch of gratuitous cameos and this and that and going on from here?" And Paradox is like, "Well, yeah, like," and so Paradox goes on and shows him all of these TV screens, all showcasing Captain America, and of course we have Deadpool, who goes on and does his salute to Captain America, and is to start to thumb through all these TV screens, and eventually he starts to see that Deadpool is just being caressingly held by Thor, and he's just like, "What's going on there?" And Paradox is like, "Oh, we can't show you that because that has something to do with the distant future." And so Deadpool is looking at this girl, is like, "What is that about?" And it's like, no, 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 no. So we have Paradox going on and telling Deadpool that Deadpool's timeline specifically is to also have been in peril. So Deadpool is to turn around and is to be looking at this locale that has this tailor for him to go on and get a completely new Deadpool suit. Going on and consistently turning to this TVA tech to just say like, "Man, like, his eyes tell me he wants to have sex with me," and this and that, and the TVA guy is just like no. And so he's like, so Deadpool is like, "Yeah, I'm sure you mean yes." And so like the guy is like picking up the phone, and Deadpool is like, "Are you calling your wife?" And he's like, "No, I'm calling HR." So Deadpool goes on to make it back to Paradox here. So we go on to realize that Deadpool's world had an anchor character, and immediately is to have stated that this anchor character had died. And so Deadpool is like, "Well, like, yeah, I'm that guy. Like, I'm not dead. What are you talking about here?" And so we go on and state that the anchor character is to not be Deadpool. Like, why would he be an anchor character? And it said the actual anchor character is to have actually been Logan. Hence, them needing a desperation of a reboot here because of Wolverine / Logan's death. Reed going on and playing the tail end of Logan and having a Paradox mouth the words because he's like, oh, like I've seen this so many times. So with now Deadpool realizing that his world is, or his timeline is about to end, as well as also not having Wolverine within his timeline, then Deadpool ends up asking Paradox here, it's like, "Well, how much time does my timeline have left?" And the Paradox is to go on and say, "Prune." Oh my god, that's what I was trying to say. Prune. So, a goofy fruit. Prune. Yeah, that's what I was trying to trigger here. So, Paradox goes on and states that, like, well, normally we would go on and prune your entire timeline and make it quick, but, like, But we just don't go on and do that anymore. So, but still, like, the TVA is going on and putting forth this Time Ripper MacGuffin device. And Deadpool finds out that he has 3 days to save his sacred, or his own timeline. So not the sacred timeline, his own timeline. So we would go on to have Paradox say that he's the merchant of, or the mercy of death and this and that, and he's like, yeah, and so like we then have Deadpool who's like, well, like, okay, now that you've told me that my timeline is going to die, I'm gonna punch you in the nose and take your little Amazon Fire Stick and like go back and find another Wolverine. And so Deadpool punches this guy in the nose and he jumps off. And like the TV tech is just like, ha, as like Deadpool is almost falling on him. But then Deadpool goes on and is to have this golden door that he goes through this portal. And we go right back to have Deadpool, who has the adamantium bone claws, and is to be facing off against these TVAs. So Deadpool then goes on to shift gears here and escapes from the TVA and starts to look for multiverse Wolverines, the best Wolverine that he can find here. So the very first Wolverine that Deadpool makes his way to is a Wolverine that is at this bar where behind him it says "Drink, Throw, Drink," and we come to find that this is to finally make a joke about how short Wolverine has usually been in the comic books. So much so that this Wolverine is so ridiculously short that Wolverine has to go on and make a joke about how Hugh Jackman is just to be this comedy genius and this and that. And like kind of bring up the fact of how short this Wolverine now is. Like, hey, short king, and this and that. So we obviously realize that this Wolverine just is not going to work out for Deadpool here, as well as also every time Deadpool goes through any number of these timelines, he gets murdered by whoever the Wolverine is. So we then go and have Deadpool, who is to go on and be part of another timeline. Oh, also I have to bring up the fighting that Deadpool goes on and does when he has the bone claws. Oh my god. Yeah, he goes on to stab into one guy's butt and stab into one guy's groin, and he is now like also like stabbing his own self in the arm. And he's like, Wolverining is hard. And so he's like stuck in between these two men, and he like pulls himself off. And so there's to be the last Minuteman there that ends up talking about Wolverine, or ends up talking about how Deadpool is the worst Canadian superhero and whatever. And so Deadpool takes a sword to this guy's mouth. Is like, you take my country out of your mouth. And he kills all the Minutemen. He goes on to his alternate timeline. But let's get back here. So the next Wolverine is to be a Wolverine from Age of Apocalypse. Getting this right now because I didn't have enough time to research. So in the comic books, this Age of Apocalypse Wolverine would be missing a hand and would have just this metal thing over it, and would normally just have one claw. So this is to be a very like savage looking Wolverine. So Deadpool, when trying to go on and talk to this Wolverine, thinking that there is so much fire surrounding around him, that it's like, hey, does this Wolverine have some kind of dragon, or what is this? So this more savage Wolverine goes on and continues to attack Deadpool without saying much of anything. So Deadpool moves on to this seemingly gambling casino-like location. And this is another Wolverine variant called Patch. If anything, Comics Explain had gone on to do a whole video about specifically this Wolverine variant called Patch. So check out that whole video. I'm not going to go on and tell you the history about this whole character. So the next thing we end up going on to is having another Wolverine that we just kind of see the back of. And Deadpool is going on of like, like this Wolverine is so muscular. What is this? And we eventually have this Wolverine turn around to come to find that this is Henry Cavill. And we're like, oh my God, Superman is in this film. And we have, of course, Deadpool that goes on and say, like, yeah, like you're going to be treated so much better here than you were at that other place down the road, down the street. And we have, this Henry Cavill being Calverine. It's very weird. So we have this Wolverine that goes on and tells Ryan here, it's like, well, hey, like, get out of here, bub, and like just kind of thrusts him out of the way. So Deadpool goes to another alternate timeline, and this, of course, is Old Man Logan. And like Deadpool has realized that this is a very weathered Wolverine, and Deadpool ends up getting a shotgun shot to him, hence why he eventually leaves this Wolverine. So next up is to go on and be a uncanny Wolverine. This is to be a Wolverine that is to be the sacrificed Wolverine, leading us to see Deadpool looking at this Wolverine as a very much tied to this yellowed X, and Deadpool is just to be like, okay, all right, like, definitely not going to go on and pick this Wolverine. So the next Wolverine we come to find is to be this brown and yellowish Wolverine that is to have been really written off from an artist named John. And we have, supposedly in this story, this being focused on the Wolverine that had faced off against Hulk. So this to be coming from the iconic comic book cover where Wolverine snicks his claws and there is a Hulk that is on his claws, and we come to find out that Deadpool is to turn around to have Hulk behind him, and like, oh my God, Hulk's in this film. We're really tying in every single MCU thing we could possibly tie in here. And so Deadpool is to go on and state to Hulk that he is a Marvel Jesus, and that Hulk should not go on and attack him here. We also have to realize that the real reasoning for Hulk, Wolverine, and Deadpool to all be right here now is simply probably because of the Hulk versus animated movie that did have Deadpool in it, which was, of course, I think voiced by Nolan North. But that movie is to be so good that people need to go on and check it out. There's also, I think, like the Hulk versus Thor movie that it's okay, but probably just not as funny as what I was to have gone on and already stated here. So eventually Deadpool makes his way to what is going to be the worst Wolverine that he can possibly choose here. So, we also had the one thing where Deadpool arrives and he grabs that axe perfectly timed, and but we don't get that here. Deadpool goes on and has to fight a couple of guys at this bar, and like this scene is to be very reminiscent of the very first X-Men film. Sorry, here I did a little burp. But then also, when we always see Wolverine, we always see him in a bar, and every single iconic image of Wolverine is normally just in a bar, is how they always set it up for some goofy reason. So this Wolverine has to be perfectly set up to be at a bar. So Deadpool goes on and is to be talking with Wolverine, and it seems that everybody knows him in this world. And so Deadpool is to go on and start talking with Wolverine, and Wolverine is like, I'm sorry, lady, but I want nothing to do with you. And Deadpool ends up irking this Wolverine on to put a gun to his head to force him to want to come with him, and Wolverine is to go on and just chug this entire beer and then passes out. So Wolverine looks at, or so Deadpool looks at Wolverine's outfit and is like, oh, like I guess somebody's not shy about wearing the superhero pajamas or spandex, because of course, funny enough, in the other original X-Men movie, we would have Hugh Jackman that goes on and makes a joke about like, seriously, am I gonna wear blue and yellow? Guess where we are now. So we even have where Wolverine tries to pop his claws, and because Wolverine is just so drunk here, he has a difficult time of getting his claws out here. So Deadpool goes on and drags Wolverine just kind of over the shoulder back to Paradox and saying like, "Hey, here's a Wolverine. Like my timeline is saved." And Paradox goes on and say like, "You know what? Out of all the Wolverines that you should have gotten, like you got the worst Wolverine. Like, if anything, no, I will not like accept this Wolverine to be on your timeline. But also, like, it doesn't work that way." So we go on to just have Deadpool that is just so like upset at this point. It's like, well, hey, I did the legwork, this and that. But so after arguing with Paradox, we have Paradox that just goes on and prunes Deadpool to make his way to the void. And so Deadpool is now gone. Wolverine ends up waking up like, hey man, what did you do with him? And Paradox is like, well, I'm going to do the same thing to you, and ends up pruning Wolverine also. So we now have both Deadpool and Wolverine within the void here. And here is to, of course, be the iconic trailer thing that they always showed the most. So Deadpool is to go on and turn to Wolverine and ask, like, hey man, like, can you help me up? And Wolverine is like, yeah, sure. And he puts his claws and stabs into Deadpool, and they start fighting it out. So Deadpool goes on and flips, or gets flipped by Wolverine, and Deadpool flips over and takes his guns and starts firing into Wolverine's stomach. It's like, hey man, like, are you gonna be a little bit more calm here? And we have Wolverine that takes Deadpool and kind of really just does this like military press, or this just kind of lift up and shoves him right into the 20th Century Fox logo. And Deadpool is like, ah, good riddance. So we then go on and realize that this is to be at a point where we're giving the fans what they want. And Deadpool is looking at these things of ammo that are on the ground, and it's like, all right, like, let's effing go. So Wolverine pops his claws, Deadpool gets his armor, and they duke it out here. So a number of just blades are just going into Wolverine's body here, and we end up all of a sudden getting a character from out of the shadows who has been cloaked, is wearing seemingly bands that are red and white, but his arm is to just have this blue wardrobe of sorts. So it's like, okay, who could this be? So he's going on and saying like, hey man, like we all have to work together, and like this cloaked man is to eventually have us realize that there is a army full of these villains making their way there with the Fantastic Car and just a number of just these vehicles that I'm not quite sure what exactly these vehicles actually are. More than likely, there might be just some kind of weird Old Man Logan vehicle references here, or some other X-Men vehicles that I'm not quite sure of, because heaven forbid I do that research. But they have these kind of just circular spheres that end up getting dragged, that more than likely will be the prison for both of these three characters. So this cloaked man ends up going on and taking off his headpiece to have us find out that this is Chris Evans. And immediately we would have Deadpool, who is to naturally assume that this is to be Captain America. It's like, oh my god, like is he gonna say it? Is he gonna say the catchphrase? And like he's gonna say Avengers and assemble. And by the time that all these villains get here, we would have instead had this Chris Evans going on and saying Avengers Assemble. He says Flame On. And we realize that Chris Evans is to be Johnny Storm Human Torch here from the Fantastic Four. So I'm like, oh my god, like, yeah, this isn't the exact same suit, because if anything, the Four was on, I think, like on one side instead of the middle. This is a variant Fantastic Four Human Torch, because probably rights issues for whatever reason. But either way, we get freaking Human Torch here. Be happy, in all honesty. So we get Human Torch here, and he flames on, and so he immediately starts to go on and tries to attack a number of these mercenaries to immediately have to be taken down by Pyro, who has the ability to manipulate fire and sucks it back into his hand. And so we come to find Johnny, who is to start to just fall upon this little tower, and every little thing is to be crashing down, and we're naturally assuming, like, is he quickly dead here? But we come to find out that's not the case. Like, he's just merely to have been taken out here. So we then would turn around here and have now Sabretooth going up against Wolverine, having this to be replaying of the very first original X-Men film. So Deadpool is going on and looking at a sorted up Wolverine, and so Deadpool is to be taking out all of these blades and like, hey man, like, we want you to look perfect for this battle because fans have been waiting for this for a very long time. So we would go on and have this fight out between Sabretooth that ends up way too quickly to be done and over with, as we immediately have Wolverine that just one slice and takes off the head of Sabretooth, and Deadpool is looking at Sabretooth like, oh, something wrong there, buddy? Little Timmy's in the well. So Sabretooth ends up losing his head, and Deadpool ends up grabbing it and is like, I have your queen, Furiosa. Like, this is, of course, referencing Mad Max Fury Road here, because there is just a lot of Mad Max references just going on here, and it's just the real joke here that this boy just looks so much like Mad Max. It's a joke. So we would have Deadpool that is going on to talk about Furiosa and the Queen, and is to also say that Wolverine is a her. But then he's like, hey, yeah, like I know that you're a him, but I just wanted to just be kind of a gender switch here. So Pyro ends up telling Toad that he's next up here. So we have Toad that is just jostling this one lever, and all of a sudden this magnetic weapon comes into play here, and this all of a sudden latches both Deadpool because of all of his metal things that is technically attached to his attire, and having, of course, Wolverine have a metal skeleton. Like, this is an easy just like grab of both these characters. But then we go on and have this like one rock come in and hit the characters and knock them both out long enough for the Brotherhood characters to go on and tie them up and put them in these cages. So when both Deadpool and Wolverine wake up here, we have Wolverine that tells Deadpool, it's like, well, hey, not all of you was woken up, or not all of you was asleep. So we have Johnny Storm going on and telling both Deadpool and Wolverine here, like what they're up against, how they're going on and having to face off against Goliath, who is on Loki season 1, episode 5, and Johnny goes and also states like, well, hey, like you're gonna have to go to uh, this one little hideout that is to be of past uh, Ant-Man slash like MCU Ant-Man, that eventually there's the butt of the joke of how Paul Rudd has finally aged. So we would go on to have Johnny Storm go on and explain all this to these two men, and just kind of putting into the fear of the fact that it's like, dude, we're probably going to die. So we get all of this kind of knowledge coming from Storm here, and then we make our way to this hideout. So we then see all the Easter egg like things, and we're all amazed that we have Hazazel, and we have come to find out that this is a variant of the Russian, and more than likely I'm like, okay, is this a comic book version of the Russian? Because again, like if the Russian would have been from the Punisher movie, we would have seen Kevin Nash here and not this actual character. From the research that they did afterwards, this seems to have been the Russian from the from just, I'm assuming, the comic books. But anyways, like I guess that's as best as they could get. Everybody I think was to question who this character was because they had no clue. So we also end up getting to see a variant Juggernaut here, and also like Lady Deathstrike, that I believe is the actual actor, and I think she goes on and plays another character somewhere in this film. And we also eventually see characters like Psylocke. There's just a lot of just Easter eggish like characters where we're just at right here. So, and then we of course have Cassandra Nova, who is to be the sister of Charles Xavier, and she starts walking off and she tells us who she is, and that she had shared a womb with Charles or Chuck in utero, and that's how we get to know who this character is, because she hasn't been in existence anywhere else. And plus also, this is to be a variant where Cassandra was to have been an existing thing. So Deadpool and Wolverine are still tied up here, as Johnny is to also be here just kind of now talking to Cassandra. And Cassandra sees Deadpool and Wolverine as no threats, so she's like, you know what, I'm going to just untie them. And the further and further that Wolverine and Deadpool start talking here, Deadpool is figuring out some way for them to be alive the longest. So Deadpool consistently keeps throwing shade at Human Torch, going on and stating that Johnny had wanted to go on and have Cassandra dead, and was planning out all of these ways to have gotten to her, and this and that. And Storm goes on and states to Deadpool, it's like, no, I wasn't saying any of that. No, I wasn't doing any of that. So Cassandra goes on and looks at Johnny, and she just kind of, like, at the flick of the hand, Storm ends up turning into a corpse here. And funny enough, later on, when Deadpool and Wolverine are confronted by this team that was working with Johnny, they have to go on and state, like, well, hey, like, I know nothing about Johnny Storm. It's like, oh, man, you were involved in his death. And like, Deadpool's like, oh, no, it's all a flesh wound. I'm sure he's okay. And Wolverine is just like, hey, man, like, if he survived that, like, he would be praying to have died. So, funny enough, when Storm dies, Deadpool is like, hey, we have to mourn his loss now. And also, like, we also have to mourn of how effective he was at ruining our budget of this film. So now we have to have both Wolverine and Deadpool face off against Cassandra here, but we realize that she is to be a far much more powerful foe, hence her being the easy enough leader of this whole regime. So Wolverine goes on and he first takes a licking at Cassandra, and Cassandra just easily like puts Wolverine in the dirt and slides him out of the way. So Cassandra is to be much more focused on Deadpool, and here's where we get the finger licking like thing that Cassandra is to go on and do with her fingers inside Deadpool's head. So we get a lot of flashes of prior scenes of Deadpool movies, but then also we get a scene where Deadpool is talking to Vanessa, and within this conversation, we have Deadpool who had not gone on to be with the Avengers, and because of that heartbreaking moment, Deadpool is talking to Vanessa about like, how about you just break up with me? Like, how about you like just say that I'm not good enough? And so Vanessa is going on and stating that's like, well, your crazy matches my crazy, like within like referencing and throwing back to the other Deadpool movie. And Vanessa goes on and at some point states that Deadpool will never amount to anything. Like, that's not exactly what she says, but it's about around that way. So we see that this is not really Vanessa talking, that this is Cassandra talking to Vanessa to figure out a way to hurt Deadpool the most. So Deadpool tells Cassandra, it's like, that's not what she said. So, as well as also me probably stating that that's probably not exactly what she said. And so Deadpool, now ticked, is taking out this baby knife. It's like, all right, like, I'm going to get to you. And Cassandra's like, yeah, with a little baby knife? Like, what are you going to do with that knife? It's like, well, it's not about my knife. It's about 6 others. So Wolverine comes from behind and stabs into Cassandra with all of his animating claws and lifts her up. And Deadpool's like, yeah, my buddy's really strong. And so Deadpool chucks his little blade into Cassandra's chest, and we then realize that if Cassandra's to be like, oh, then she's like, come on, like, this isn't gonna work. So both Wolverine and Deadpool realize, like, oh, like, we're facing off against a real formidable foe here, and we also have to talk about the wheelchair, because they harpen back onto a Charles Xavier wheelchair. They don't say what wheelchair that it actually is related to. I'm assuming it's the X-Men 1 wheelchair. And we'd also have Cassandra that mentions that she has gone on to kill some Xaviers within this void. Because Charles Xavier had died in Multiverse of Madness, and also that wouldn't have been his wheelchair of choice, because that one is to be the classic animated one. So it has to probably be one of the ones from maybe Days of Future Past or something. Makes the most sense. So I almost forgot about all that. So Cassandra is to go on and state to both Deadpool and Wolverine, it's like, well, hey man, like, if anything, like, I'm just kind of biding time here because you're going to just be fed and sacrificed to Goliath here. So I'm gonna go on and just kind of have you just be the rent, and the rent is due. So like, this also kind of connects to what Doctor Strange's character had said by the end of the very first Doctor Strange movie, where Mordo ends up telling Doctor Strange, is like, well, hey, like, you're going on and like you're like doing all kinds of things that are like really messing with the fabric of everything. And at some point, like you doing what all that you're doing, like at some point, like that rent will come due. I don't know if that was a kind of a callback to that or what, but maybe it was just a coincidence. So when they're realizing that Goliath is making their way to them, we then turn around and have Wolverine that is taking this one machine that is going to be able to rocket them off. And Wolverine calls for Deadpool, like, hey, you want to get on? Like, come on, let's go. So the two of them are to make it far past this locale and they crash land. And as soon as they crash land, Deadpool is on top of Wolverine. And so Deadpool ends up asking Wolverine, it's like, hey, what are you thinking about? So there is this weird joke about how Deadpool has to take this knife out of Wolverine's butt, and also that he is telling Blake about what Wolverine had done to him. Blake Lively, of course. So let's go on and take a minute here about some article stuff because I want to get to that. But let's get to this last bit of this scene here, and then I'll get back to all the article stuff. So Wolverine is saying like, well, hey man, like since you've talked enough here, like it's my turn. And Deadpool is saying it's like, well, yeah, but the fans are gonna like it that you're having a bit of dialogue here. So Wolverine is stating now that like that there is going to be like them trying to get back to Paradox because that's their objective here, and so they have to figure out a way to get back to him, and also like Wolverine is to need some reason for him to go on and go back to his world. And Deadpool is going to go on and make a promise to Wolverine that he's going to fix Wolverine's world or timeline to eventually get him back what he all lost, making a an educated wish. So now let's get to the article stuff. So come to find out, there was an article of Chris Evans stating that if he was to go on and ever want to return to the MCU in one way or another, it would always have him want to go on and be Johnny Storm because he feels that there were some unfinished business stuff with that character. And so it's actually really good that they gave us closure with that there. There was also a number of articles about everybody stating that there were so many characters coming back into this film. Like one thing was listed was obviously like Elektra, but then eventually the roster kept changing of who all was going to additionally be added here. Some people said it Blade. Some people even said Ghost Rider, which Ghost Rider wasn't actually to have been a character to have been added to this film. And some people were going on and stating that X-23 was going to be involved in this movie because X-23 was to be having certain photos of her having certain claws and goofy like things. Also, we had Deadpool that was making a joke in this film about how Wolverine is to be the fork guy. Funny enough. But yeah, like there is a ton of articles if you really would have digged to find out a bunch of stuff about all these people talking about what they would have wanted to have done in this film. And that was to have gone on and been an amazing thing to see that all of that stuff actually came true at some point. So, with that all said, after Deadpool and Wolverine are talking here, we have the two of them going on and saying, like, well, you know what, I'm really hungry here. So they both walk off. So the two of them make it to this diner. And so Deadpool is keeping on ribbing Wolverine with the fact that he's wearing the yellow and blue. It's like, hey, why all of a sudden that you do want to wear this costume now? Because if anything, so many times before, they were wearing black leather and they were doing anything but trying to be comic book accurate with Wolverine as far as putting him in the yellow and blue suit. They were going on and giving him leather jackets and going on and still giving him like kind of black leather outfits and this and that. They're doing everything in their brother, but besides giving him the comic book accurate Wolverine. So this time around, they had to go on and finally give us a comic book accurate Wolverine, which I'm sure that's what they always wanted to do, but couldn't find the right project to do so. And plus, also, by the time that they kept on, like, doing Wolverine the way they did him, like, there was just never probably a really good time because we've just set up this Wolverine to just not ever go into the blue and yellow. And plus, that goofy line in the very first X-Men film. So, we take the time here to have the two characters kind of get to know one another, but then again, Wolverine like doesn't really say exactly to Deadpool of who he really is. So of course, kind of reiterating here that Wolverine is not the best Wolverine, and if anything, we come to find out possibly via Cassandra whether this is a truth or a lie, that he had gone on and after a number of his X-Men had been killed, he started killing everyone. He started killing not only the bad guys, but then he also killed the good guys. So really telling us that this Wolverine possibly had went evil. Interesting enough. Or he just went straight up Anakin Darth Vader and just wiped out everybody. Interesting enough. That actually was a really good play out of like we finally get some kind of evil Wolverine. But anyways, at least it's not a clone. Logan. Anyways, because we more than likely would have gotten a clone Wolverine to just keep the Wolverine thing alive. And what the heck was all of that stuff finishing up from Logan, where they had this teaser of this whole DNA thing? Like, I guess they can't go on and do any of that now and say whatever the heck that was. But I guess also we would say that stuff would also have been tied into Secret Wars or Secret Invasion. My bad. I'm sorry. To say where that came from. I don't know. Like, I guess just trying to figure out how to seal these huge holes in certain Marvel stories at some point in our lives. So we also have Deadpool's story, and he goes on and he talks about how he had fallen in love with this stripper and eventually had gone on to try and join the Avengers and the X-Men, and this and that, and kind of telling us his story all up until now. So we then get the two of them after this nice little diner talk to just kind of walk off here to eventually find that there is to be this unusual dog running to Deadpool, and we would come to find that this is to be a dog that is to be Dogpool, and weirdly enough, the character's name is Mary Poppins. So I'm like, wait a minute, like, Yondu is Mary Poppins. This dog is not Mary Poppins. Yondu is Mary Poppins. Like, don't go on and have that name be of that character. What the fuck? Like, Michael Rooker is technically Mary Poppins. Do not give this... No. I get it that more than likely Mary Poppins is also just a Disney name that can be thrown around, but whatever, like, it's probably also a comic book thing that they rolled in here, but still, no. So, Deadpool goes on and takes off his mask just so that way he can take this dog and have this dog lick all over his face. Like, they are basically French kissing. That's how, like, weird this is going on and doing. And when Ryan Reynolds was talking on Hot Ones, he goes on and say that, yeah, that dog, like, licks you freaking everywhere. And I mean everywhere. So, as well as also them going on and talking about how certain things were leaked, like how the Wolverine origin thing was leaked, and, like, had gotten a huge amount of hits, and, like, and how Hugh Jackman at some point was a hired clown, and kind of did any job that he could possibly do. A lot of interesting actual things going on in that Hot Ones interview that I actually did like. Moving on, I tiny smidgingly did my research this time around, but then I also did this interview research of the Hot Ones even before I saw this originally, but nothing in my brain could have fired to have thought about that. So after going on and seeing Dogpool, we have another Deadpool variant named Nicepool, and this Deadpool is to be looking just like Ryan Reynolds, but having long hair and a very weird kind of bun-like thing. So, in my mind, I bizarrely backtrack this, where if I ever was to have gone on and had a Deadpool movie idea, it would to have been to have another Ryan Reynolds character within a Deadpool movie, and I was like, oh my god, they did this. But also, they were bringing back the Deadpool core in this film, so I was like, oh my god, yes! Like, there's going to be so many comic book sales that are going to happen from this movie, and I'm sure, like, all of those comic book sales are going to get way boosted up. So logically, get your comic books now because legitimately they're going to get skyrocketed up in price. So we go on to meet up with this Nicepool and just be like, okay, like, where's your mask? And we would have Nicepool just kind of showing off his face. So we have this Nicepool that goes on and it's to mention how, like, hey guys, you should definitely meet Lady Deadpool. She just had a kid, but man, like, just the way that she looks, like, you would never have noticed it. Because we come to find out that Lady Deathpool is actually to have gone on and been Blake Lively. And supposedly everybody was saying bizarrely that in this Wolverine and Deadpool film that Taylor Swift was going to be in this movie bizarrely, and I don't understand why. A lot of people were saying that she was going to be casted as Dazzler, and I'm like, why is she in this film? Why does it make sense that Dazzler is in this movie? Like, why are we creating brand new characters just out of nowhere? And also, Dazzler has already been a thing in the Marvel show Runaways that I went on and saw, and more than likely regretted for its weird, bizarrish alien thing. But that is what that show is. Also, I would have liked to have. I said this in prior video. I would have wished to have had the X-Men character of Legion in this movie, but a actual comic book accurate more Legion character than what they did in the Legion show. I would have also have liked Ghost Rider in this film, the Nicolas Cage thing, his character to have been in this, but I don't think also it would have made a lot of sense to have him in this film. And plus, also, that character would have been so uberly powerful that logically, like, it would have probably have taken away from this movie. And also, if we would have had Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider, he wouldn't have been able to fight these people within the daytime because he's more of a character that fights during the night. Because he would have not been able to have had his powers. But then also, in the Ghost Rider sequel, that changes. I don't know why, but it does. But moving on. So, Nicepool goes on and gives both Wolverine and Deadpool this Honda Odyssey for them to be able to go on this road trip to bizarrely maybe have this maybe be some sponsor of this film. I don't know why. But Deadpool is to go on and be forced to hand off Dogpool back to Nicepool, and they then go on to get in the Honda Odyssey, which is a car, to drive off to have Deadpool just kind of poking his head out of this window like a dog, and like have them just start on this this trip here. So finally, at some point of this road trip, they stop the car, and Wolverine, when he was at that diner, had slugged rubbing alcohol, and at some point, Deadpool is to make fun of the fact that Wolverine is just consistently just consuming any kind of alcohol or any kind of altering thing that he can, like windshield wiper fluid and anything he could get its hands on. So the two of them stop this road trip, and Wolverine realizes that he's like, you know what, like, I don't think that you're going to go on and live up to your promise of going on and being able to fix my timeline. And Deadpool goes on and says, yeah, like if I can figure out how to change your timeline. And so that's when Wolverine is like, no, like you told me that you can go on and do this. And he's like, well, I gave an educated wish. And Wolverine is like, oh no. So Wolverine finally breaks down and is to tell Deadpool that he is like God's favorite idiot, and that the only real problem is that he can't go on and die off, but instead just be a problem for everybody left on Earth, and this and that. So Deadpool is to go on and shove into Wolverine's face these 9 people within this photo, everything that he goes on and cares about, and that is the main motivation for Deadpool going on and doing and saying whatever he needs to save his timeline. So after Wolverine goes on and throws Deadpool this shade about how he is to go on and like not even have a stripper be able to love him and this and that, we have the two of them duking it out, fighting out in this Honda Odyssey. So the two of them are fighting out so hard that like they're breaking this vehicle, and Deadpool chucks his swords out the window, and like they're doing all of this close combat. Wolverine breaks Deadpool's arm, thrusts him out of this trunk window, and Deadpool readjusts his arm. They continue to fight, and they're consistently just duking it out one another, having one another just consistently laugh, and by the fact that they can't really be killed here. So they fight for so long, and there's so much bloodshed that Wolverine is now passed out, and Deadpool is just surrounded with just a bunch of seatbelts. It's hilarious. And whoever is to notice this vehicle is to drive off with them to lead them to this cave. So Deadpool wakes up, and every time he's to wake up, he's to say the word Thor or something about Thor. So we have Deadpool waking up in this cave, and he asks Wolverine, like, hey, do you know where we are? And Deadpool is like, no, but like, or Wolverine is like, no, like, but they have good alcohol. So Wolverine is consistently chugging away at all this alcohol, but we have to naturally assume that probably more than likely Hugh Jackman can't consume all of whatever this tea or whatever this fake alcohol is. So more than likely what he probably does is he probably chugs it, or he puts it to his mouth, but he like plugs the hole so he's not legitimately drinking it, and then he sets it back down. So I'm sure logically, like, we're not having this character actually drink all of this booze, because that would go on and have made Wolverine like such a huge, heavy man through all of these takes and all of this stuff. So, but there's also times where Wolverine is actually just spitting out the alcohol. Maybe that would just have been like what he actually has been doing, and at some point in time, they actually took that take of him spitting it out at that point. So eventually, after inspection of this cave, we have Deadpool who goes on and hears someone coming, and so Deadpool tries to attack that person. Come to find out, this person knocks Deadpool down and is to whip out a sigh, and we come to find out that this is Elektra Nachios, from the Elektra solo film and also the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie. And after that, we come to find that this is Wesley Snipes' Blade, and for how we had gone on and liked those movies, and eventually, like Blade Trinity happened, and people were just to be kind of on the fence between that film. Still, eventually, Blade is to go on and state that he is to probably be the one and only Blade. Uh, we'll see about that when there's legitimately going to go on and possibly be another Blade film. So, because they're supposedly working on one, but then again, who is going to be this Blade? Who knows? So, we then also have a card that ends up coming into the fray, and we come to find out that this is Gambit. Channing Tatum's Gambit. And this was to have been a character that was to be shown in a X-Men panel of sorts, but had never actually shown life, to the point of Deadpool going on and telling this Gambit, it's like, oh, like, so you were a Gambit that no one wanted, and so that's why you're here now. But I'm sure, like, Ryan Reynolds was actually a friend of Channing Tatum. It's like, so hey man, like, I'm putting this project together, like we want you in this film because you were never to be a thing, and we want to make like amends of that. And also, like, hopefully at some point all these characters go on and make eventually future MCU movies and projects or whatever, or somehow they end up getting rolled into what eventually will be a continuation of their story. And somehow, like, it would be nice if there would be like some kind of Midnight Suns project or something going forward for them to be rationally used again. But the more and more we go on and talk here, Deadpool and Wolverine are talking to these guys and stating like, hey, like we need to figure out how we can go on and get back to Cassandra Cain, or Cassandra Nova. I almost said something goofy here. And if they were to not go on and meet all these people and have like Deadpool state that Blade, like, I thought he was retired. That was kind of funny also. But so we push on here. So Deadpool is going and ask like, well, hey, yeah, like, if anything, like, we should probably get like Magneto's helmet, right? Because in X-Men First Class, we come to find out that like Magneto's helmet is a inhibitor thing, and they said, hey, yeah, like we did have a Magneto, but he's sadly dead. So Deadpool was like, man, like they didn't spare the money to give us a Magneto in this film. What the heck? So they go on to realize, like, well, the next best thing has to go on and be Juggernaut's helmet. And so, like, oh, okay, all right, like, so we do have something that just makes sense here. So we also have to find that the leader of this whole regime is actually to be X-23. And so X-23 has kind of had some reservations about bringing specifically Wolverine back to this team, because X-23 is to go on and say to Wolverine that he was always the wrong guy. So they go on and they figure this all out. And so Gambit is to have gone on and said that they have had problems with a number of people trying to go against Cassandra Nova. Punishers and Quicksilvers and eventually Daredevil. And Deadpool turns to Elektra. It's like, oh yeah, like you're dead. Your Daredevil died, and Elektra's like, oh yeah, it's been some time now. Like, plus also this makes me want to go on and think that any number of these characters might have actually been casted within this movie, but maybe for whatever reason of them just having these small cameos, it didn't work out. Maybe there is still at some point some movie somewhere down the road that could bring these characters back to life, because they're an island of misfit toys like characters. But let's move on here. So Deadpool goes on, and so Gambit is stating also about Johnny Storm. And so, like, yeah, whoever this Johnny Storm is, like I hope he's thriving. And And eventually, while Deadpool is talking, it's like, well, yeah, Johnny Storm would have wanted us to get to avenge our timelines, and and Blade is going on and saying like, well, yeah, like I didn't even know like uh, my timeline was in peril, and I didn't get a chance to fight for it, and Gambit is saying like, yeah, I never even had a timeline, like I was just kind of born here. So we we have eventually Wolverine coming clean to the group that Deadpool is to have gone on and been responsible for Johnny Storm's death, and Gambit is like, "Hey, you better come clean, or I'm gonna start just decking you." So Deadpool ends up stating like, "Yeah, like he was kind of responsible, but it was also Johnny's fault." So when Wolverine is consistently drinking Gambit's alcohol, Gambit is to go in and tell Wolverine, it's like, well, hey, like since you are Wolverine, it's like, hey, you're more than welcome here, but not welcome enough to just start chugging through my alcohol. So Gambit throws his card to crack one of these bottles of beer, but Wolverine just grabs another one and just starts chugging away. So now that I've covered all of this, at some point I'm still missing out on a ton of things here, and also I didn't state anything that X-23 had said. But hey, I completely forgot about this because also there's a number of things that are just happening in this film. So we have this separation, a moment between both Wolverine and X-23, and we always have this built up that Wolverine is to be this hero and had gone on and done this ultimate sacrifice to save these kids, and is to really built up this alternate Logan Wolverine. And so X-23 is going on and telling Logan here about all of this. So Logan in turn is to go on and tell X-23 about how like he's the worst Wolverine of his world, and that he had gone on and had the entire X-Men team at one point or another wanted him to put on the X-Men costume, and Beast and Jean and Cyclops had all wanted him to put it on, but Wolverine had just thought that the costume was just like a joke. And so at some point when Wolverine had gone on and just got shit faced, he came back to the team and realized that they were all killed, they were all gone. And Wolverine, because of that one mistake, had leaded him to then turn around and put on the suit because that is the last memory of his whole entire X-Men team. So kind of like getting to know this Wolverine, but not quite enough. So we would then have Paradox that is going on and calling Pyro here, and Pyro has made it to this diner and he's holding this light out and grabbing this can of Spam. So Paradox is going on and telling Pyro, it's like, well, hey, like you need to figure out a way to stop what's going on here. And Pyro's like, well, yeah, I'll do it, but like for a price. And Paradox is just like, like I don't like how you're talking that way. Come on. So Paradox is going and talking with Pyro, and we find out that they're both working together. And I'm like, okay, so there is just kind of some secret thing kind of going on between the two of them. And Paradox is just kind of very upset after he hangs up with Pyro, just like, God, like I have to tie myself with these ruffians or whatever. So the next thing we end up seeing is the Honda Odyssey driving its way with all of these team members, making it to uh, Cassandra Nova's hideout, or basically what I would call Ant-Man's corpse. So we would have these characters going on and talking here, and we would of course have Remy the Bow, Gambit, who is talking, and like we have jokes how Deadpool is talking about Gambit's dialogue coach and how like no one can really understand what the heck he's saying. So Deadpool is reiterating to the audience is like, well, yeah, like he's just reiterating that we're going to get Juggernaut's helmet and we're gonna do what we're gonna do here. So so they toss this bazooka to Blade here, and Deadpool ends up wanting to figure out where that bazooka came from, and Elektra states that it's from some Punisher. And so immediately in my mind, I'm thinking of what Punisher that it could be, because Deadpool is also figuring out that there's been like 5 different versions of Punisher, and I'm honestly thinking that this could be probably from the '90s Spider-Man animated series Punisher, because that animated series Punisher had like a slew of just different kinds of weaponry. Like he would go on and have like an arsenal of just kind of bazookas, and if you would watch the '90s Punisher animated series character, like yeah, like he had a real like all kinds of things. So this this Punisher bazooka is to go on to be given to Blade, and so Blade is to say it's like, well, yeah, there's been a number of Punishers, but there's only been one Blade, and there will always be one Blade. So he fires off this bazooka, and so we see the Cassandra Nova hideout, the Brotherhood hideout, the Brotherhood of Mutants hideout, because basically there's just a bunch of mutants here, and there's also the Russian from the Punisher thing. Anyways, we have the Juggernaut that is calling for all the mutants to let them know it's like, hey, like these guys are coming, and so they open the doors for these. Well, like the bazooka kind of blows up the technical doors, so these guys drive in. There's this whole kind of really nice boom bopping music going on, as well as also there just being a really good soundtrack in this movie. There is at one point where there's to be like an Avril Lavigne song that I thought was really good, where they're driving along. So all the heroes start to make their heroic stances to tell us, okay, this team is coming together, and Wolverine is to be the last one to get out of the trunk, and we're like going and doing this whole setup here. So we then start to see all of the villain side also get themselves together with Hazazels and all the people that are either tied from X-Men movies like The Last Stand or X-Men First Class. Characters like Hazazel that had supposedly died in one of the other X-Men movies, but we would find that he is still alive here. Uh, Lady Deathstrikes, Psylocke, everybody in the Brother is all here. So, with that said, we would have the team turning to both Deadpool and Wolverine, saying like, "Hey man, like we're gonna go on and we're gonna take all these guys out and hand the package to you. Like you just guys go on and just kind of make sure that you're alive long enough to fulfill what we need to do here." So Deadpool and Wolverine make their way to Cassandra Nova, who is just kind of sitting on this throne around this kind of very bizarrish looking uh, uh, kind of a room that she's in. And all while that's going on, we have a number of mutant people that are all getting killed here. Blade is going on and wrapping Toad's tongue around him and killing him. We have Gambit that is going on and tossing a number of cards and killing a number of mutants here. At some point, Gambit does go on and kill the Russian from the Punisher thing. Um, so we have Deadpool and Wolverine facing off against Cassandra here. And so she goes on and quickly takes out Deadpool. She tosses him up on the ceiling and then tosses him off to the side. And so now Cassandra is going on and being faced against Wolverine here. So we have X-23 that faces off against Juggernaut, and this is to be, of course, the Last Stand Juggernaut, which is to not have the same actor, but it is what it is. So X-23 goes on and is to start chopping Juggernaut down to size, as well as um, basically chopping off his feet from his rest of his leg, which is really just cut right by the Achilles tendon and drop him here. And she goes on and takes his helmet and is to just kind of toss it in a backpack. So we would have Cassandra that's putting her finger through Wolverine's forehead here and pushing as if it is to almost be like from Terminator 2, where the liquid metal guy is to be like, I know this hurts. Call out for John. So Wolverine is going through this seemingly like area of a number of possible graves, or just like this kind of unusual looking world uh, of just his uh, losses and and fears and whatever. I don't know. But so Wolverine starts going on and talking about what he had gone on and done. And after he is to have gone on and lost the X-Men, he had gone on to start killing a number of people because the humans had gone on and decided to go hunting and kill off all of the X-Men. So this is not like Old Man Logan, where in the Old Man Logan story, Wolverine had gone on and accidentally killed the entire X-Men, and he didn't realize it because Wolverine was just thinking that all these people were to have actually have been uh, the bad guys, like Mystiques and Magnetos and this and that. And so Wolverine started to go on and face off against all of these evil doers, but then like I think Emma Stone or somebody had gone on and been playing with Wolverine's mind, and when it's finally to be revealed, Wolverine accidentally murders the whole entire X-Men, and that's what starts off Old Man Logan. And sadly enough, I guess that's not the exact same story that happens in this film. So Cassandra is just kind of comforting Wolverine here and is saying, like, you know what, like, I can help you, like, because she is to go on and state that she didn't have the luxury of being mentored by Charles or Xavier and be under his tutelage like Wolverine was, and how he had gotten to be much more calmer and tame and whatever. And Cassandra is going on and saying, like, well, hey, like, I can help you, like, I've got you here. And Wolverine is like, no, I've got you. Because I think at some point in time, in one of these X-Men movies, at some point, Wolverine had said, like, hey, I got you. I think it's in one of these movies. I don't remember what exactly it is. But so Psylocke is to have gone on and had this rope to try and grab X-23, as X-23 is to chuck this backpack to have Deadpool grab this backpack. So Cassandra all of a sudden is to be feeling weak, and like her head has all these veins popping out of it. Come to find out, Deadpool is to be thrusting the Juggernaut helmet on to Cassandra here, and Pyro ends up coming in and fires into Cassandra Nova, and killing her off, it seems. So we have Pyro, who goes on and complains like all the stuff that I've had to do, all the meat and all the things that I've had to do, and all the work I've had. And so Wolverine just goes over to Pyro and punches him out. I'm like, yeah, like X2, X-Men United. But Wolverine goes on and tells Pyro, it's like, hey, not everybody gets a speech in this film. Oh my god, I'm almost going over 2 hours. Ugh. Anyways, this is gonna be a review that's gonna be a lot longer than the other review, but oh well. So I have a little bit more information here. So Cassandra has the Juggernaut helmet on, and so Wolverine is telling Deadpool, it's like, hey, he can't allow Cassandra to die here because Wolverine is remembering Charles Xavier, and Charles Xavier would go on and do anything he could have to have found Cassandra Nova and like have loved her and uh, like treated her like family. And so Wolverine is to say like, hey, like this yellow and blue costume is to state that like is to represent my X-Men family, so I can't go on and justify having Cassandra get killed here. So take the helmet off. So Cassandra wants the helmet to take off, like she's to say, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna this, and I'm gonna that. So Cassandra then goes on to like pretend that she's going to kill Deadpool, and Deadpool's like, don't do me like Johnny. So Cassandra goes on and tells Wolverine, it's like, well, hey, like because you had spared me, like I'm going to spare you getting killed by Goliath, and also like I'm going to give you what you want. So Cassandra says that she had gone on and met some rinky-dink magician and had found that he had the ring slinger, the thing that she goes on and does the magical Doctor Strange circle thing with, that also uh, had been used in No Way Home to eventually have appear Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, the alternate Spider-Mans from No Way Home. Yeah. So and Deadpool ends up saying, "Oh, this is Doctor Strange." So the two of them are running off to race into the hole, while the rest of the team are just kind of looking on after kind of Blade gets stabbed and this and that. So Deadpool and Wolverine go into the hole uh, and they end up crashing into Drive Max, where Peter is going on and saying like, well, hey, like since me and Wade are best of friends, like I'm gonna give him half a commission here. So Deadpool and Wolverine crash in this car, and the family is going on looking on like, oh my god, that's Deadpool. Oh my god, that's Wolverine. And so the two of them both walk off. So Pyro ends up revealing to Cassandra that he was working with Paradox because like Cassandra was going to go inside Pyro's head, and Pyro's like, no, like how about you just ask me for once? How about you just put your hands in your pocket and just let me confess to you what all had gone on? Which doesn't really save his life, because at some point Cassandra like puts her hand through Pyro's brain and then snaps his neck and kills him anyways, as she appears back in the other timeline that is to have been Paradoxes. So we have Paradox that is going on and working on the Time Ripper, and he's at the 24th station. So he's talking to these tech guys. They're working on the Time Ripper. So they come to find out that both Logan and both Deadpool are back. So Paradox is to just kind of meet them at the pass here. So Paradox is saying to the two of them, like, wait a minute, like, why are you here? Like, if anything, you should be in the void. Like, how did you come back from the void? And Wolverine tells Paradox, is like, well, you should ask Cassandra Nova that, because she was to figure that out. So all of a sudden, Cassandra Nova appears, and that's when Paradox dies, and Cassandra Nova takes her fingers into Paradox's brain and is to know all the knowledge about the Time Ripper and this and that. So, I'm trying to as quickly as possible finish this up here. I know this is going long. So, um, Dr. Willis is going on the Hunter from the Loki show is to go on and know from one of the TVA techs that hey, like there's an unauthorized Tom ripping device going off, so like you need to go in to look into this. So Cassandra Nova, while dipping herself into Paradox's brain, had also taken Deadpool and Wolverine and just flung them into, with her powers, flung them into this building. So both Deadpool and Wolverine make it out of this building, and Deadpool just kind of waits it out for an extra to just kind of leave. So all of a sudden, there is to be this circle, and these Deadpool core start to appear here. We don't know why, but they all of a sudden appear. There isn't a Doctor Strange uh, looking Deadpool that we see here, but for some reason, they just all appear. So Dogpool appears first, and then we start to get Nicepool, and then every single one of the other Deadpools start to arrive. We see Lady Deadpool, we see Head Deadpool, or Headpool, we see Zenpool, we see Cowboy Deadpool, we see Baby Deadpool, Kid Deadpool, which is to be the most, I guess, raunchy one, and we see Deadpool 2099. We see a plethora of different kinds and styles of Deadpool, that a Golden Age Deadpool, all these kind of comic book references, things that we don't understand why they're all here, but they're all here to just kill them all off. So all these Deadpools are going on to try and stop Deadpool from doing what he needs to do here. So that, of course, leads to have Deadpool to then have Nicepool with him, and like the Lady Deadpool ends up whipping out her guns and starts just firing away. So Deadpool grabs Nicepool and he just starts getting pelted with bullets, and it's hilarious. And they end up just tossing off to the side of this car, and so Nicepool is getting all bloodied up and just spewing out all this blood. And so Deadpool ends up asking Nicepool, it's like, well, hey, how long does your healing factor just kick in? He's like, healing factor? Because he was saying that he doesn't want to get into the fight because he has low bone structure. So Deadpool goes on, is like, oh, okay, well, like there's a donut there's a donut cart over there. Like, if anything, like that definitely is to be a place that has like hospital and medical equipment there, so we'll be fine. And Wolverine's like, dude, that isn't true. So they go all the way to this donut cart, and again, like Deadpool is getting a Nicepool to just be plethored with bullets, and Deadpool takes a break and is like, well, hey, like why? Like Nicepool is asking Deadpool, it's like, hey, like why did you stop? And Deadpool is like, well, like you weigh a ton, like come on, like why aren't your legs moving? And Nicepool is like, because I'm paralyzed. So Deadpool continues on to go to the other side, and Nicepool has lost his head by this point. So Deadpool still tries to do CPR on a dead corpse without a head. But the only real saving grace is the fact that he has like these golden desert eagles, and that's what leads both Deadpool and Wolverine to face off against every single one of these Deadpools. And Wolverine had just easily have made it to the other side because he was holding on to Dogpool, and none of the Deadpools wanted to fire off against Dogpool. So this is where we finally get where Wolverine is to take and put on the cowl, that of course is to be known for comic book accurate Wolverine. And so we now have Deadpool saying like, hey, Wolverine, are you ready for this? And Wolverine's like, yeah, like killing 100 of you? Yeah, this is going to be great. So they start going on and killing every single one of these Deadpools. And they go on through like pushing against these Deadpools, and they comb through all of them. They get through this bus. They kill all these Deadpools that are in this bus. And by the end of the bus, they jump, and Deadpool makes a horrible landing. And so he's like, man, the only thing that everyone's going to remember is this horrible landing. So the last thing we end up seeing is this baby Deadpool, and the baby Deadpool is laughing because we all of a sudden see that every single one of these Deadpools are all to come back to life. So we all of a sudden have Peter Pool that comes into play here and saying, like, hey man, like, don't come after him because, like, he's with me. And so, like, oh my god, Peter Pool, oh my god. And so, like, all the Deadpools just surround Peter Pool and just having, like, oh my god, great, this is awesome. And like that distracts all the Deadpools to now have both Deadpool and Wolverine go after the TVA. So Cassandra is going on and activating the MacGuffin, and now Wolverine and Deadpool are asking Paradox here. It's like, well, hey, what can we do to stop all this? So Paradox goes and ends up stating that there is a bridge that they can somehow put together, or this circuit that they can somehow connect to matter and antimatter, because we have to go on and have all this matter. So they go on and thoroughly like discuss what's to happen here, and Paradox tells them, it's like, well, hey, like, if you guys go on and if you connect antimatter and matter together, like, you're not going to matter. You're going to die permanently. There's no way that you can live past this. So both Wolverine and Deadpool make their way to this matter antimatter spot to make this bridge, and we have Deadpool saying, it's like, well, yeah, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to make the ultimate sacrifice. And Wolverine is like, no, like, I have nobody. Like, you have this family. So, like, and here's this picture. And, like, you have all these people. You have 9 people. So, like, if anything, just go on and say hello for me to all those people that you're going to go back to. So, Deadpool goes on and says that it's like, you know what, you're not the worst Wolverine. Like, if anything, I've always been wanting this team up. And if anything, like, you're the best Wolverine. So we have Wolverine go through the door, and Deadpool hits him with his fire extinguisher, and then Deadpool goes into the door. He's saying, like, oh, like, if anything, like, I'm doing this all because I'm the Marvel Jesus, and I'm also Spock. And this, of course, is to be remembered of the Spock who had gone on to sacrifice himself, and then eventually Kirk had sacrificed himself in the Star Trek films in the exact same way. So Wolverine bizarrely is looking at Deadpool as he's going on and doing all these goofy things. He's like walking down these stairs, and like he's really, of course, nervous about him possibly dying permanently here. So, like, and he's also saying, like, what are you saying, Wolverine, as I'm doing the ultimate sacrifice? So Deadpool goes on and he is trying to grab this blue antimatter or matter thing, and he's trying to reach to the other side of this other yellow matter antimatter thing to create this bridge. And the whole entire time, Wolverine is trying to crush through this door, trying to get to Wolverine, realizing that he should be making this sacrifice instead of Deadpool. So the whole entire time, Cassandra is also going on, and she's trying to figure out how she's like making this bomb further and further work to consistently have us see the percentages going up. And Paradox the whole entire time is like, oh my god, we're gonna die here. They're not gonna be able to make this happen. So, as well as also Dr. Willis is looking on to see like what's gonna happen here. So we have Deadpool that can't reach to create this bridge here, and then all of a sudden Wolverine appears and he holds on to Deadpool, and he's now popping his claws to then reach the other thing to create this bridge. And then the two of them are hanging on, they're looking at one another, and they're like shaking and they're bobbing and they're weaving and they're whatever. And they're remembering all the flashbacks of all their stories together, assuming that they're going to die here. So we finish up here to realize that Cassandra is to explode and die. And so Dr. Willis appears to have Minutemen behind her and is coming to Paradox like, hey, like you had an illegal time rifting machine here. What's going on? And so uh, Paradox is saying like, well, hey, like you need to go on and ask Cassandra Nova this because she was a whole uh, part of this. I need to go on and have both Wolverine and Deadpool as heroes, just save us all, and how he was like saddened and just mourning their loss. And then all of a sudden, Deadpool and Wolverine come out of the shadows, and Paradox is like, "Oh crap!" So Wolverine, now shirtless, is having all the tech guys and everybody and their brother just kind of like, "Ooh ah," and Deadpool is like, "Ah, just throw on a shirt." So because at some point he joked about how Wolverine was out of shape because of the divorce. So we all of a sudden have Peter Pool showing up, and like he's kind of distracting these guys, and so we have Dr. Willis at some point looking at Peter Pool and saying like, "Man, you really fit into that suit." But so they go on and they realize that that Paradox was all part of the evil regime, and that Dr. Willis is to arrest and take away um, Paradox here. So Dr. Willis ends up telling both Wolverine and both Deadpool that it seems that if anything, like their timeline is okay now. That if anything, um, like their timeline is to be like possibly to a point to where they can go back to it, and at some point, like the TVA will probably call upon them. So Deadpool ends up turning to Wolverine. It's like, yeah, you're gonna do this till you're 90, because he keeps making that joke. So after that, again, we have Deadpool and Wolverine that go and they eat shawarma, and so Deadpool turns to Wolverine and says like, yeah, like the Avengers invented shawarma. So the two of them go on and they have this meal, and all of a sudden Dogpool shows up, and like Wolverine says to Deadpool, it's like, well, yeah, like if anything, the Avengers would have been happy to have you on their team. And so Deadpool starts walking off, or Wolverine starts walking off, and Deadpool is like, hey man, like come and meet my friends. So Wolverine ends up having Deadpool meeting Blind Al here, and then they turn around and get this whole group together, and X-23 is with Wolverine, and Deadpool is with Vanessa, and Wolverine takes the dog from Deadpool, and so Deadpool, I believe, ends up saying to Vanessa, like, I did all this for you. And that's how they just kind of wrap up this film. There is an end credit scene where Johnny is going on and saying all the horrible things that he had said to Cassandra Nova that supposedly Deadpool repeated, and like that is to go on and say it's like, well, yeah, like Johnny should have been sacrificed from all of this that he said about Cassandra Nova and this and that. So like it wasn't Deadpool's fault, and he wasn't making all that stuff up, and like all the more reason to just finish up this review. I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. I try to say that as quickly as possible because I know that this is going long. Goodbye, everyone. Bye, everybody.